Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into some really compelling source material. It's a book review
Yeah.
exploring a story set in, well, probably the last place you'd expect for a tale about grief,
Mm.
a fancy wedding resort.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're looking closely at The Wedding People. It's a novel by Alison Espach, just came out May 14th, 2024, from Henry Holt & Co.
Yeah.
Sounds like it really plays with expectations.
Definitely. And our mission here really is to pull out the core ideas from what this review calls a sharp, emotionally layered novel. We want to get into why it's getting praise for being, both darkly funny and deeply human, and explore how it weaves together different genres: literary fiction, focusing on character and theme, psychological drama, getting right inside people's heads, and even that dark comedy element, finding humor in pretty serious stuff.
That initial setup is just fascinating, isn't it? You have the main character, Phoebe, checking into this luxurious wedding resort. Normally, you'd think, okay, celebration story, but for Phoebe, it's completely different. There's this huge irony. The review says she's barely holding it together after a major life-altering personal loss.
Hmm.
So she's trying to cope with that there. In this place overflowing with, like, forced happiness,
Hmm.
it really makes you think, how does that kind of environment clash with deep grief?
Yeah.
Or maybe how does it expose it even more? So as you get into the story, you see Phoebe really trying hard to just blend in, to be anonymous in what the review perfectly describes as the pastel-colored chaos of brides, grooms, and families.
Mm.
She's essentially trying to become invisible amidst all that, structured joy.
Right. But what's really interesting is even though she wants to be alone, she unwillingly entangles, that's the review's phrase, with this group of strangers. They get called the wedding people.
Right.
And the thing is, the review points out that every single one of them is also running from something or grieving or hiding a secret.
Ah, okay. So it's not just her.
Exactly. The story kind of unfolds in episodes over a few days, and these interactions she has, they keep forcing her to face the pain she's trying so hard to outrun. And the resort itself, it's not just wallpaper. The review says it's almost a character. Its fakeness, its artificiality, actually makes Phoebe's internal struggles feel even more real, more authentic by contrast, like a spotlight on raw emotion.
Wow. And it sounds like it's not just the clever idea, the premise that makes the book stand out. The review really praises Espach's tone and style. It says it's this amazing mix of biting satire with poignant introspection. So it swings between being genuinely funny about wedding culture and then hitting you with these really quiet, devastating thoughts on loss and being alone. That's a tough act to balance.
It really is, and the review captures it well, saying Espach's writing is elegant and rich, but it's also got this fantastic dry humor running through it alongside real emotional tension. She manages to walk this delicate line between cynicism and vulnerability. And you'll find these moments of like real philosophical insight tucked away in observations about really ordinary, banal things.
Mhm.
If you've read people like, say, Otessa Shfei or maybe Rachel Cusk, the review suggests you'll probably recognize that kind of stylistic approach here, that unique voice.
Okay, so connecting all that, the setting, the style, what are the big ideas, the core themes this story is digging into?
Well, there are definitely a few powerful ones that the review highlights. First, obviously, is grief and denial, especially that weird, surreal feeling of Phoebe mourning deeply surrounded by all the over-the-top cheeriness of the wedding venue.
Right, that clash again.
Exactly. Then there's the performance of happiness. The book apparently does a brilliant job showing weddings as these highly choreographed performances, where real feelings often get buried under all the social rituals.
That makes you think, doesn't it? What are we actually celebrating and what are we maybe hiding?
Precisely. And it also explores connection and isolation. Phoebe desperately wants to be left alone, but she keeps getting pulled into other people's emotional dramas. It suggests that connection, even when it's awkward or painful, is maybe just inevitable, unavoidable.
Yeah. And lastly, there's a sort of gentle critique of the absurdity of modern rituals, especially how weddings can become commodified and artificial. But importantly, the review stresses it does this without losing empathy for the people who genuinely find meaning in those rituals. It's not just carrying it down.
That nuance sounds important. Okay, let's talk characters. Phoebe sounds like the absolute center. The review calls her one of the strongest aspects of the novel, described as deeply complex, witty, and emotionally raw. And apparently her internal monologue is sharp, sometimes cruel, but always honest, so you really get inside her head, warts and all. Absolutely. And what's really skillful, according to the review, is that the other wedding people aren't just like silly caricatures, even if they seem that way at first glance. Espach slowly peels back their layers, revealing their own trauma, their longing, their complicated complicated pasts hidden beneath the, party clothes.
So they have depth, too.
Yes! And even the resort staff, the other
Yeah.
couples floating around, they act as a kind of rotating mirror for Phoebe's inner life. Sometimes it's funny how they reflect her issues. Sometimes it's quite sad. It sounds like a really well-developed cast.
Okay, turning to what critics specifically loved the strengths. The beautifully observed prose gets mentioned a lot. Espach seems to have a keen eye for the small, uncomfortable details of human interaction. And that dark humor we talked about, it seems crucial. It lets the novel tackle really bleak topics, but with a kind of wit and lightness that keeps you hooked instead of just feeling weighed down.
Yeah, that balance again. Now, while the praise is strong, it's fair to mention what some readers might see as criticisms, things the review flags, for instance, the pacing. It's apparently more about internal transformation than plot. So if you're someone looking for lots of dramatic twists and turns, you might find it a bit slow.
Okay, character-driven rather than plot-driven.
Exactly. Also, Espach apparently intentionally withholds certain facts and resolutions, leaves things ambiguous. That could frustrate readers who prefer everything neatly tied up at the end.
Understandable.
And finally, the characters themselves. The review acknowledges some might find Phoebe and maybe others difficult to sympathize with because of their behavior self-destructive, maybe a bit aloof.
Right.
But, and this is key, the review suggests that is arguably the point. They're meant to be complex, maybe even unlikable at times. That's part of the realism.
Got it. So bringing this all together for our deep dive on The Wedding People, what's the final word from the review?
The overall feeling, it gets a pretty strong 4.5 out of 5 stars, right? Which says a lot. It really does. The consensus seems to be this is a gorgeously written, darkly funny, emotionally intelligent novel. One that tackles grief in, well, one of the most ironic settings you could imagine. The review sums it up as a compelling meditation on loss, love, and the fictions we build to survive.
The stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah. And if this sounds like something you'd be into, the review suggests fans of authors like Ann Patchett, Sally Rooney, Miranda July, maybe Rachel Cusk, too.
Right.
And interestingly, for TV watchers, it apparently shares a similar tone and setting with HBO's The White Lotus. That comparison really paints a picture.
It certainly does. Wow, what a fascinating journey exploring how The Wedding People digs out these deep human truths from a place that seems so surface level. It really shows how good storytelling can find depth anywhere.
Definitely. And maybe a final thought for you to take away. Think about how our big social rituals, things like weddings, sometimes act as these really elaborate stages for our most private, deep struggles. What sort of performances of happiness, as the review puts it, might you be seeing around you? And what hidden stories could be playing out just beneath that shiny surface?
That's a powerful thought to end on. We definitely encourage you to check out The Wedding People if this sparked your interest and see what you think. Until our next deep dive, keep exploring the stories around us.